The morning light filtered through the worn curtains of their modest Brooklyn apartment as Monique Williams stared at the 2 Broadway Palace Theater tickets on the kitchen table. 6 months had passed since Robert's death, but the apartment still echoed with his absence, especially for their son Marcus. "Marcus, honey, breakfast is ready," Monique called, adjusting her scrubs. Her night shift at New York Presbyterian had ended just 3 hours ago, but today was too important for sleep. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his lanky 12-year-old frame swimming in his father's old Knicks hoodie. The silence that followed him like a shadow these days made the apartment feel even emptier. "I made your favorite, blueberry pancakes," Monique said, forcing brightness into her voice. Marcus nodded slightly, sliding into his chair. His eyes caught the tickets, and for a moment, Monique glimpsed a flicker of the boy who existed before grief had hollowed him out. "Is it really happening today?" he asked quietly, the first full sentence he'd spoken in days. Monique reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "Yes, baby. Just like Dad promised. Denzel Washington's new movie premiere, and we've got tickets." What she didn't say was how much those tickets had cost. Nearly a full week's salary, purchased from a resale website when the official ones had sold out in minutes. What she didn't say was that the rent was already 2 weeks late, or that she'd picked up double shifts all month to make this happen. Because this wasn't just about seeing a movie star. This was about the last conversation Marcus had with his father. Robert, confined to his hospital bed as the cancer claimed its final territories, had made Marcus promise not to give up on their shared passion for filmmaking. "When Denzel comes to town for that new movie he's shooting," he'd said, oxygen mask fogging with each labored breath, "you go see him. You tell him Robert Williams' son is gonna be the next great director." Marcus had nodded, holding his father's increasingly frail hand, both pretending that there would be enough time. 3 weeks later, Robert was gone. The tickets had become Monique's mission, her way of keeping one last promise to the man she'd loved since high school, her attempt to reach her son across the growing chasm of his grief. "We'll leave at 4, Monique said, watching as Marcus took a small bite of pancake. "The premiere starts at 7, but they say Denzel might arrive early to greet fans." Marcus nodded, his fingers tracing the edge of the tickets. "Dad would have been so excited." "He is excited, baby," Monique whispered. "Wherever he is." After breakfast, Monique retreated to her bedroom for a precious few hours of sleep before the evening's event. As exhaustion pulled her under, her final conscious thought was a prayer that tonight might somehow begin to heal her son's broken heart. What she couldn't know was that those counterfeit tickets sitting innocently on her kitchen table were about to lead them into one of the most profound moments of their lives. Not because of what they promised, but because of how they would fail. The afternoon transformed Marcus in subtle ways that made Monique's heart ache with bittersweet recognition. As he stood before the bathroom mirror, carefully combing his hair with Robert's old tortoiseshell comb, she caught glimpses of the boy from before. The one who laughed easily and talked endlessly about camera angles and storytelling. "How do I look, Mom?" Marcus asked, adjusting the collar of his only button-down shirt, freshly ironed and slightly too small at the wrists. "Handsome," Monique replied, her voice catching. "Just like your father." The subway ride from Brooklyn to Manhattan's Theater District was filled with Marcus's quiet anticipation. He clutched his father's worn copy of Denzel Washington's biography, dog-eared pages marked with Robert's notes about the actor's technique and presence. "Did you know Denzel turned down roles that stereotyped black men?" Marcus said suddenly, breaking the ambient noise of the subway car. "Dad said that's why he's not just famous, but important." Monique nodded, savoring this rare moment of her son's voice. "Your father admired that about him, standing for something bigger than yourself." As they emerged from the underground into the fading October light, Broadway dazzled with its marquees and bustling energy. The Broadway Palace Theater stood majestic among them, its facade adorned with massive posters for Redemption's Edge, Denzel Washington's latest drama. A red carpet extended from the curb to the entrance, surrounded by barriers holding back gathering fans and photographers. Security personnel with earpieces and stern expressions monitored the growing crowd. "Look, Mom." Marcus pointed to a section where fans clutched memorabilia and photos. "That's where we can stand to see him arrive." Monique checked her watch. 5:30 p.m. "Let's get our seats first, then maybe we can come back out." They approached the theater's grand entrance, where attendants in formal attire checked tickets. Monique pulled their tickets from her purse, the excitement of the moment momentarily overshadowing her exhaustion. The young ticket collector took their tickets, scanning them under a handheld device. His expression shifted from professional courtesy to confusion, then discomfort. "Ma'am, there seems to be a problem with these tickets." Monique's smile faltered. "What kind of problem?" "They're not registering in our system." He scanned them again, then called over a supervisor, a middle-aged woman with glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. The supervisor examined the tickets, then looked at Monique with practiced sympathy. "I'm sorry, but these tickets aren't valid. They appear to be counterfeits." The words landed like a physical blow. "That's impossible," Monique insisted, her voice rising slightly. "I purchased them online. I have the confirmation email." She fumbled with her phone, pulling up the email from Premier Tickets Online, a site she now realized, with sinking dread, she hadn't properly researched. "I'm afraid this isn't an authorized seller," the supervisor explained gently. "We've been seeing a lot of this lately. People creating fake websites, selling counterfeit tickets at premium prices." Marcus stood frozen beside her, his father's book clutched tightly against his chest, eyes fixed on the ground as the devastating reality settled in. "Please," Monique said, lowering her voice. "This is so important to my son. His father just passed away, and this was—" Her voice broke, unable to finish. "I'm very sorry for your loss," the supervisor said, genuinely sympathetic but unmoved in her position. "But we're completely sold out. There's nothing I can do." Marcus turned away, his shoulders hunched in that now familiar posture of defeat that had haunted him since Robert's funeral. Something in Monique snapped, after months of holding herself together. Through Robert's deterioration, through the funeral arrangements, through the mounting bills and the night shifts and Marcus's silence, this final disappointment was too much. "I paid over $300 for these tickets," she said, her voice trembling. "That's a week's worth of groceries. That's half our electric bill." People in line behind them began to stare, some with annoyance, others with uncomfortable pity. "Please lower your voice, ma'am," the supervisor said, glancing around nervously. "My husband promised our son this before he died," Monique continued, tears now streaming freely down her face. I can't fail him again. Please, just standing room. Anything." A security guard approached, his hand resting casually near his radio. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem," Monique said quickly, trying to compose herself. But the dam had broken. Months of compressed grief and exhaustion poured out as she sank to her knees in the lobby, one hand still gripping Marcus's arm, the other covering her face. "Please," she sobbed, no longer caring who watched, no longer maintaining the strength she'd held onto for everyone else's sake. "My boy just needs this one thing. Please help us." Marcus knelt beside her, his own tears silent as he tried to pull her up. "Mom, it's okay. We can go home." The security guard reached for Monique's arm. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to. What seems to be the problem here?" The new voice cut through the humiliating scene, deep, measured, and instantly recognizable. Monique looked up through her tears to see Denzel Washington himself, dressed in a tailored suit, standing just inside the theater's side entrance with his security team. The lobby fell silent, the moment suspended in collective disbelief. The theater lobby froze in a tableau of suspended motion. Staff members straightened their postures. Fans who had managed to enter early reached for phones, and Monique, still on her knees, looked up through tear-blurred vision at the man who had unknowingly become the center of her family's final promise. Denzel Washington assessed the situation with the measured calm that had become his trademark both on and off screen. His security detail moved to create space around him, but with a subtle gesture, he indicated they should stand down. "Sir, everything's under control," the theater security guard said, his tone shifting dramatically from authoritative to deferential. "Just a misunderstanding about some tickets." Denzel's gaze moved between Monique and Marcus, lingering on the boy who clutched the worn biography against his chest like armor. The actor noticed the book, his own face on the cover, much younger, from early in his career. "That doesn't look like just a misunderstanding to me," Denzel said, his voice carrying the natural authority that had commanded screens for decades. He approached Monique and Marcus, kneeling down to their level despite his immaculate suit, a gesture that sent a ripple of whispers through the growing crowd. "Ma'am," he said gently to Monique, "may I ask what happened here?" Monique wiped her tears, mortification now mixing with her grief. "I'm so sorry for the scene. We should go." "Mom, it's him," Marcus whispered, his eyes wide with disbelief. Denzel smiled at the boy. "What's your name, young man?" "Marcus Williams, sir." The words came out barely audible. "Marcus," Denzel repeated, as if testing the weight of the name. "That's a strong name. And this book you're holding, you're a fan of films." Marcus nodded, words failing him completely. The theater manager had arrived now, recognizing the potential PR disaster, or opportunity, unfolding in his lobby. "Mr. Washington, we can handle this situation. You have the premiere to prepare for." Denzel raised a hand, silencing the manager without ever taking his eyes off Marcus. "I'd like to hear what happened from Marcus himself." Something in the actor's quiet insistence created a small bubble of dignity around them amid the spectacle. Marcus looked to his mother, who nodded encouragement despite her embarrassment. "My dad," Marcus started, his voice breaking. He took a deep breath and tried again. "My dad and I always watched your movies together. He was a filmmaker too. Well, not famous or anything. He made documentaries about our neighborhood in Brooklyn." Denzel listened with a focused attention that had made him legendary for character work, as if Marcus were the only person in the room. "Before he died, before the cancer took him 6 months ago, he made me promise I wouldn't give up on our films. And he said when your new movie came out, we had to see it because..." Marcus's voice caught again, but he pushed through. "Because he said watching you act was like taking a master class in truth." The lobby had grown completely silent. Even the most jaded New Yorkers stood transfixed. "Mom worked extra shifts to buy tickets online, but they turned out to be fake," Marcus finished, his eyes downcast. "It's not her fault. She tried really hard." Monique felt a fresh wave of tears threatening, but Denzel's next action stunned them into silence. He stood, removed his suit jacket, and draped it gently around Marcus's shoulders. The jacket engulfed the boy's frame, but the symbolism of the gesture wasn't lost on anyone watching. "Marcus Williams," Denzel said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who understood loss intimately. "Your father sounds like a man of exceptional taste and wisdom. I'm honored that my work meant something to him. And to you." He turned to the theater manager. "These two are my personal guests tonight. I want them seated next to my family." The manager nodded quickly. "Of course, Mr. Washington. Right away." Denzel turned back to Monique, who had finally managed to stand. "I'm sorry about your husband, Mrs. Williams. Raising a son alone isn't easy. I know my own mother faced similar challenges." "Thank you," Monique whispered, overwhelmed by the unexpected turn of events. But Denzel wasn't finished. He placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Young filmmaker, I'd like to hear more about these neighborhood documentaries your father made. Perhaps after the screening, you could tell me about them?" Marcus nodded, speechless. As the manager led them toward the reserved section, Monique heard Denzel speaking quietly to his assistant. "Find out where they live. I want to arrange for the boy to visit the set of my next project, and see if we can get him into that youth filmmaking workshop at NYU, anonymously." What happened next unfolded like a dream. They were seated in plush reserved seats beside Denzel's family members, who welcomed them warmly. During the film's introduction, Denzel mentioned a young filmmaker in the audience named Marcus Williams, who reminds us all why stories matter. Marcus sat wrapped in Denzel Washington's suit jacket, his eyes no longer downcast, but focused forward with an intensity that reminded Monique so much of Robert that her heart both broke and healed in the same moment. After the screening, true to his word, Denzel spent 20 minutes with Marcus, listening as the boy hesitantly shared ideas for the film he and his father had been planning. A documentary about Brooklyn's changing neighborhoods through the eyes of its eldest residents. "That's a film I'd want to see," Denzel told him. "Your father's vision lives in you now. Don't let anyone tell you your stories don't matter." As they finally left the theater, hours after their humiliating moment had transformed into something miraculous, Monique noticed Marcus walking taller, his father's book still clutched in one hand, the actor's business card in the other. "Mom," Marcus said as they waited for the subway back to Brooklyn, "I think I'm ready to finish Dad's documentary." Monique wrapped her arm around her son's shoulders, feeling something shift between them. Not an end to grief, but perhaps the beginning of its transformation into something that could, eventually, give life rather than only take it away. 3 weeks later, a package arrived at their apartment containing a professional camera with a simple note. "Every storyteller needs the right tools. Looking forward to seeing your work someday. DW." The story of what happened that night spread through social media despite the lack of cameras documenting the moment. Theater staff and attendees sharing how a Hollywood legend had paused his premiere to comfort a grieving family. But the real impact wasn't measured in viral shares or entertainment news coverage. It was measured in the gradual return of Marcus's voice at the dinner table. In the weekends he spent interviewing neighborhood elders with his new camera, and in the way Monique began to believe again that there might be unexpected light even in the darkest seasons of life. 6 months later, when Marcus's short documentary about his father's Brooklyn premiered at a local youth film festival, Denzel Washington sat quietly in the back row. No entourage, no fanfare. Just a man honoring a promise between a father and son that transcended even death itself. Because sometimes the most powerful scenes happen when the cameras aren't rolling, when genuine human compassion steps into the spotlight, reminding everyone watching that beneath the fame and fortune, the truest measure of greatness might just be the willingness to kneel down beside someone at their lowest moment and help them stand again.